What was the hardest lesson you've had to learn since owning a gym?
Well, I think for me, one of the hardest lessons was having people not stay at the beginning, especially. I was pouring my heart and soul into this, and then having them, it just not be their thing. And that was, that kind of hurt my feelings. And then learning like, okay, this is going to weed out the people that don't fit what we're doing and it doesn't fit our culture. So now I don't see it as a negative, but at the beginning, that was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was not trying to be everything to every single person. So it's sort of along the same lines, but you want clients at the beginning, and
you need them, right?
You need them.
It's relatively important.
Right. Someone comes along and is like, hey, I need you to help me train for a marathon. And you're like, okay. It's like, that's not my area of expertise, but let me try. So now being in a place where it's like, no, we know kind of what our field is. We know our lane, and focus on doing that really well, rather than just trying to do everything for every person and convince them that you can.
Yeah. It's a lot less stress to not have to convince people that what you're doing is great. They see it, they experience it. And that's so much easier than what we were doing at the beginning.
Well, so take us back to the beginning. That's a hard lesson that gets learned. And I think all of us have struggled with that in one way or another, no matter what level of business you're in or what type of business you're in. So how did you all get there? How did you get started? Kind of what were those first early mistakes that we all kind of suffered through? Kind of what was your start of this journey that you guys call Stout-Heart Fitness?
Yeah. So I was already coaching some with a CrossFit affiliate that we had been, going to, and doing both like classes and personals. And then we had, through a whole bunch of series of events, got started up with Strong Fit and Julian Pinot. And we just, as we were learning that stuff, we wanted to, we just had a heart to want to really be able to work with people. Like we saw the impact that it was having with us. A lot of the things that we were doing, and we saw other people that were like, okay, they need this too. So we wanted to be able to share that really with others.
So we basically started in a garage, a friend's garage, because we don't have one big enough to have a gym. So we started in someone else's garage.
It was already equipped.
With just the basics. And this friend was like, just come start, start it.
She's like, don't pay any rent. Just start doing some classes, get some people to just come. So it was,
we just
4
started
people at the very beginning.
One of them was my sister. One of them was my mom. And that's how it started. And I think those are some of they're still there. 3. Yeah. And one of the people was the owner of the house.
Nice.
So
that's awesome. So go ahead, Tyler.
Well, that's always, I always, when people talk about starting gyms, there's 2 ways there's a lot of ways to do it, I guess. But there's the way I did it, which is take all the money that I have and some money that I don't, and all the money I've saved, and just liquidate it at any price, any interest rates, any tax penalties I got to pay, and then go in and open this gym. And you're on the hook right away. And I would like to convince everybody in the world to not do it that way. That is the way. It's very hard. It's very difficult. The way you guys did it is, I always tell people, start with clients. You know what I mean? If you don't know and you want to get into coaching, you want to get in the business of coaching, that way of doing it is why go broke on equipment? If you have a few people, what a great way to start. You've got a few people. Why go into debt first? What a weird backwards way that a lot of people do this, or me included. It's I should make sure this is hard financially before I start. Instead of just starting it square and just knowing you don't got to make it harder to start doing the thing. You just start doing the thing. Right. That's really cool.
So why would you do it that way? Why would you be so smart? No. Why would they do it? Tyler, what you explained.
Because I only learn these things the hard way. So I would assume somebody learned from somebody else. But
no, that's my point.
Why did you settle on that instead of just breaking the bank?
I think a couple of things. One, we did actually get some advice from people just to hey, you know what, just get started and don't why would you put that much risk out there to get started with in the first place. Like see, and as we did, we realized like, oh yeah, we're still learning like what kind of coaches we are. We're learning like what kind of a community we want to build. Like if we don't know any of those things, like how are we even going to build the gym to be what we need it to be? Because we don't even know what we need at this point.
And I had never done coaching before.
Yeah.
I hadn't been a coach. So for me, it was like starting at ground zero, like just start to get the experience. I really believed in what we were doing and I wanted to share it with people. So I knew I just had to start.
But the other part of it too is just like, it wasn't like we had like, tens of $1,000s in the bank. We didn't have like any assets we could liquidate to like do that. So it's kind of like, well, if we're going to do it, we're either trying to figure out how to get like a pretty, a loan that we're not going to be real happy with down the road.
Yeah.
And I think someone had told us too, it's like, if you do that, you're going to always you're beholden to that. Like you're constantly like, even more so of like, I need the clients. It's like, no, I really need to get these clients regardless if they're a good client for me or not, because I have these bills that have got to be paid or I'm out of business. So,
and one thing about the two of us is we really like to do our own thing. We don't like people telling us what we need to do. So it was more simple. It was a better way for us to do it.
Yeah.
It's been hard.
Nobody else needs their hands in your business.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
No,
It was hard.
Tyler and I have talked about like the benefit of, I guess this is a harder way of saying it. It's a benefit of like being poor and bootstrapping stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, there's a lot of hard lessons that get learned of like, what can I do with duct tape? Could I build a gym? Could I build a gym with duct tape? Like how much duct tape is like too much duct tape for a gym that people pay me to come use?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that is true.
And the other thing too, I think that's been good for us is like, it kind of emphasized just that's like, people aren't coming for like, if they're coming to us, they're not coming for fancy equipment. They're not coming for the air conditioned facility. They're coming because they believe in what the two of us are doing. If they are, then they're going to be a good member of that community. And I think the community reflects that now.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely
because
does.
none of them came for any of that. Like it's nicer now, but none of them started off because it was a super nice facility or the greatest equipment. It was because of the coaching and the community. So.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing we've joked about before here on the podcast, the idea of like no one's showing up because of the back hyper machine that you got. Like it's going to be all those intangibles, how you make your people feel. And I guess that definitely kind of moves in the direction of, as you guys have got this started, you've bootstrapped it, you've kind of started to learn who you are, and then more importantly, kind of who your people are, who your tribe is, all these people that you're wanting to build and how you want people to feel. It's how did you transition from kind of a place where you're like, well, this is more of like a hobby and all my family members are now here, to where now it's almost starting to become maybe real, like really real, like people are actually now coming, and it's almost like, could this be a full-time thing? Is this a real thing and no longer just an experiment?
Yeah.
I
think the point where we kind of decided that was it was actually the spring. Was it spring of? No. It was spring of 2020, right before the whole.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was perfect timing.
This is great timing, guys. You know what they say, success is like 80% timing.
Yeah. We had the timing down. That was for sure. I think I want to say it was like February or something.
Yeah.
Maybe even January.
What a time to round that corner, huh?
Especially in California. That's awesome.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And I think I think part of it is we were starting to hit our stride as far as we had enough members, and that's always obviously been like the number one marketing advertising for us, is just people that believe in it enough that they're like, oh, okay. Well, we were starting to create some things where they could invite people to the gym easier, because we realized like we've got to make that easy for people to invite their friends and family to see like what it is they're doing that they're so excited about. So we were starting to kind of hit our stride with that and get more members in. And
he was working a part-time job at that point. Like he wasn't full-time job. I was still at home with the kids, homeschooling.
Still are.
Still am.
Homeschooling in.
Just throw a full-time job on top of that. Pretty simple.
Why not?
Yeah. So part-time job, and then
And
we
then
were hitting our
it
stride.
ended up like that job was just, it was slowing down, and the owner was like, hey, I don't know how much work I have left for you here at this point anymore. And I was like, well, I'm like, I could go try to look for something else, but we're like kind of right on that edge of like, I think we could just make this work if we just go all in on it. And so we did, and then a month or two later,
everything's
everything's starting to shut down.
Perfect timing, because you definitely would have gotten laid off by the dude that was kind of like, oh, I don't know, and be like, oh, you were definitely going to be low man on the totem pole for that.
Right. Yeah. So it was kind of like, in some ways, it's kind of like, well, okay, if we're going to do this, I don't know. I'm kind of believer in that. If you decide to like make something work, like you're going to find a way to make it work. You may have to change the way you're doing it, but if what you're doing, there's an actual need for it, which, I mean, if we've seen there really is, you figure out a way to.
And if you're desperate enough, desperation has a way of driving you to get a lot accomplished.
Yeah, it does.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for a lot of people in a lot of ways, like the pain gets great enough and you'll change anything at this point, but like I think you're absolutely right in that, like, if you want the thing, you're going to do the thing. And there is a thing that most gym owners who kind of stick to it, like, probably aren't going to be told that they can't make it work. You know what I mean? You'll just do it for less money, or we'll do it in a different way, or we'll do it part-time, but like, you're probably always going to have your hands on that thing if it matters to you. And I think once people get to that point, like, like the answer, like John's question was like, that's when it becomes really real, where you're like, no, I'm going, I'm jumping this. There's no parachute. There's no nothing. The whole world's crumbling down around you now in March of 2020. And you're like, well, this is where we are. I think that's tremendous.
Yeah, one of my favorite ways of working, and the favorite people we've ever worked with, are folks that are like, all right, so I have this idea. Go on. Okay. I want to jump out of the plane with all the stuff. First, I'm going to throw all the stuff of how you build the parachute out the plane. And then I'm going to jump out after it. And what we're going to do is we're going to see, can we build this thing on the way down and land safely? And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, let's do that. That's a good idea. So that's super cool. I dig that.
But by not adopting that philosophy to every segment of your business model, what you've done is you only did that piece to committing, right? Your commitment was at that level. What you didn't do is like what I did, which is essentially like mortgage yourself into that position, which is like an absolute nightmare, where now, crap, I'm committed like more than I even want to be at this point. And so, what's been going on since then? How has it been making things work? Have you guys adapted, evolved, doors open, doors closed? What's that been like?
All of the above.
Change is the only consistent thing.
Yeah.
So right after it happened, we were, I think, like everybody, kind of scratching our heads like, okay, does this mean everybody's going to cancel their memberships? Like, how do we still provide them what we were doing and still hopefully make money? So we kind of think, like most people, would try to do like the online thing, and we did for a couple, 2 or 3 months. It was horrible. I didn't like it at all.
What we do is so hands-on that was like just not fun at all, but made it work.
Yeah. We did lose a few members, but I think, again, kind of going back to the community, like people believed in what we were doing so much, like even if they, and I don't even know, I'd be interested to actually go back and ask them if they felt like they were getting a similar level of input and service from us. But because I don't know, but regardless of what they felt like they were getting, most of them stayed on, which was really cool.
Started back up again in the summer. A lot of people, ended up coming back, which we were really grateful for.
We did actually lose a few more people right at the tail end of all of that, which was interesting. It wasn't right at the start, which I thought would happen. It was more kind of like as we were opening back up.
I think as people lost jobs and things like that.
Yeah, the cost starts to spread around a little bit, and everybody else has to start to adapt to their situation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But as we started to come out of it, there's people too who are like, man, I need to do something. And I think because of what we were doing, of working a lot like on emotional health, a lot tied with the physical, that it started to resonate with some people coming out of that, lockdown, and just feeling like they were separated from people. Like, oh, I realize that I'm not just overweight, or I'm not just out of shape, but there's other issues going on. And so what we were talking about, of those two being tied together, the emotional and the physical health, really started to resonate with people coming out of that. And
so we did start moving a little bit more into the emotional health after the whole COVID thing. So I would say that both of us have gotten even better at training people for that. So that's definitely a change that's happened since we started all this, is more emphasis on that. We've moved garage gyms, still someone else's garage, but we're still in a garage gym, keeping the overhead low.
It's bigger. It's more, it's kind of more like its own facility now rather than like right into,
Yeah.
And most importantly, are you still training now the owner of that house?
Sometimes, yes.
Stay consistent.
Yes. And still the original.
Still my mom, still my sister.
But it's definitely, I would say we've kind of hitting like another gear now, even from like, there was that one like right before all the shutdowns and everything that we hit that point of like, oh, okay, we can make this work. Of now we're getting to a point like, okay, now we're sort of in that uncomfortable stage of we need to grow more and we need help, more people to like actually be helping in the gym, but we don't have like a lot of work for them yet. But it's, it's like that, okay, we're going to have to stretch again to kind of make that next step. So
I think once you do that enough too, what you find out is that you inherently understand that you're resilient enough. You're like, all right, I can adapt this. I can do this. I can be, when money's tight, I can keep it cool. I can capital. You start to just gain like trust in your abilities throughout this process. But then your business just becomes more resilient, like all those ebbs and flows and, there's peaks and valleys, but like as all of that comes across you, you get to the point where you're like, all right, well, this is just what this is again. and I think that you, like you said, you seem like you're much better equipped and much more confident in your model, your coaching and all of it now, as opposed to like, geez, can I do this? Should I do this? Do we even bother in the other person's garage? How does this go?
Yeah. And even wondering.
Go
I was just going to say at the very beginning, too, you just wonder if people even want you to coach them. So now you're at a point, you're like, oh, okay. So long as I find the right people, they're out there. I just have to do a better job of like my message reaching them and you'll have clients. So
well, you always could have done a soulless business. You know what I mean? You always could have sold, 6-week booty groups. There's all sorts of those things. And there's nothing wrong with doing things like that in the context of a larger offering, I think. But you absolutely could have had more members in the beginning, but like you didn't want to do that thing. You wanted to do your thing. So I think the fact that you guys like stayed hunkered down and crafted an identity and did your thing and did it carefully, I think is really, really, really important, because that's the thing John and I talk to businesses all the time is guys, they let that stuff run away from them. And then they don't understand that what they actually have is valuable because they don't really believe in it. They never went all in on themselves. They went all in on like, just, you want to lose 5 pounds in 2 weeks? Let's do this, and that becomes all your sales pitches, and it's less you.
Yeah.
And,
but it's hard to do
when people keep that stuff in check the whole time through. Stay tuned in on that the whole way, and everything else, you can just get better at everything else, but you can't like substitute for that. Otherwise you're doing somebody else's thing and it's somebody else's business, and it always sucks.
Yeah. It's hard though, when you just need to pay the bills. It's really hard to stay focused on it. And we've totally lost focus before and then kind of gone, wait, what are we doing? This isn't why we decided to start this up. This isn't what we want to do. So,
I feel like every time we feel that kind of check of like, I'm not liking what we're doing here, it's always time for us to like kind of step back and be like, are we getting away from what we really know we're supposed to be and what our actual identity is? And every time the answer is So it's like, okay, so how do we refocus and, continue to grow, continue to hopefully provide a better experience, but it's focused on it the way that we know we're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and to know that now your understanding as it evolves, and maybe in the beginning, like, Elspeth, you said like, oh, gee, I'm new to coaching. I've never coached before. And so it's hard at that point to go, oh, this should take care of me financially. Because you're at that point, you're like, I should be killing it. My bank account should be chock full. I'm brand new to this. I just started. You don't normally have that expectation of yourself or of what the business should give back to you, because you're just always pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring into it. But I think as time goes, everybody gets to the point where they go, oh, I'm done. Like, it's time for me to start valuing. I know what I got. I know it's good, and it's okay for me to want to make a good living doing it and to find ways to do it. I see a lot of gym owners who craft an identity well, the way you guys have, end up doing that and don't do the other things, which is like, oh, I've got a really good identity, and now let me use that, because the people that like that, it should reward me financially. It should not be my identity. Shouldn't be me falling on my sword trying to help people all the time. And that's tough. That took me that took me a long time to try to get past. It's like, oh, no, this stuff should help me too. You know, my business should help me. It shouldn't just help other people. It should help my family. I'm spending so much time away. And so it's good to see people tuned in the whole way through, you know.
It has to help you too, because eventually you can't help people anymore if it's not helping you.
And part of what helps people is us being passionate about it. And if I feel like completely drained and dreading going into coach, then I'm not going to really help anybody. Yeah. So making enough money to take care of my family makes me a lot more passionate about what I do, quite honestly.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting is you guys have talked about like this owning who you are. And I think anytime we're new, and I think we all are it's one of those things you've talked about, like this ebb and flow that you've experienced of sometimes we get away from our center and then we come back to our center and kind of have that feeling and that constant reassessment that's happening. But certainly whenever we're new doing anything, we all suffer from this imposter syndrome. Yes. Which is like, you know, it just like Tyler said, is the idea is like, no, I'm brand new at this. And we hear phrases of like, you fake it till you make it. And I'm a total fraud. Do people even like me? Like, these are all those things that are like, will they come back? And interestingly enough, because you went all in on like the eve of self-destruction for all gyms globally, you kind of allowed yourselves to where you could say, honestly, now at the end of it, or at least really kind of been in it for a long period of time, like the people are here for a reason. Yeah. So that imposter syndrome kind of starts to dissolve a little bit, and then it kind of gives you that confidence of like, no, we're going to do it the right way, because we've always been trying to do it the right way. And I think just making the effort, and you guys have done it you've chosen, it could have been harder, right? Certainly if you mortgage to the hilt, but you've done it a hard way. You've done it like pure sweat and equity. Like that was the angle from the get-go, like ground up. We're going to make this work.
Because sinking money in the beginning can save you a lot of work, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, that's the piece I've known of every project I've started, is that I don't end up with a bunch of money to start these projects. So when we do them, it's like, well, I got to do a ton of work now. This is just the way this works. And I appreciate that, you know, that startup method. I don't fault it to anyone who starts a project with a fat stack. It's a good way to start. Trust me.
No, it's awesome.
But I got a good eye for people who start and do it themselves. And that's
because you guys have learned every piece of your business. So there's no piece. There's no piece of marketing and how you treat people when they walk through the door and text message, all the things that you could outsource and spend money on and do all these things to make it smoother and sharper and completely lose all the, like you're stole 100% of the way. You've now done the hard way to where now you kind of have such a solid foundation that now it's kind of like, all right, now I could, like you just said, we can start bringing people in to help us and get some help. And so what is that process? What are those things that you guys are looking at now? You're kind of coming into where almost like you're closing another chapter and opening it up to start looking at people of being like, no, I think we need help, or we need assistance. Kind of what have been the first few things you guys have been looking at? Now you're coming into that chapter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, well, the first stuff was just like some of the help with some of the administrative stuff. So we have had a couple of people that have been, you know, helping out with some of that. But a lot
of it still falls on Matthew.
Yeah.
And that's not why we started up the gym, is we don't have a passion for administrative work.
What?
So
what are you talking about?
If you did, there's just not enough of it in the gym business. There's enough of it for it to suck, and not enough for you to get paid good doing admin work either. That's a bummer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So not a bad thing but the more I do of that, the less, I always feel more disconnected from the business itself, the more I end up doing that. So having people that I can know will do a good job, and I don't have to constantly be checking, like I'm still aware of what's going on and making sure like, oh, okay, invoices have been submitted for, some of the different work we do and stuff. It's like, okay, but not having to constantly have that in the back of my mind, taking up space when I could be, actually working with people or doing more of the big picture planning. And then the other one is
coach.
Coaching. Yeah.
We do have one person who helps us out. But we could use more help with that because we're at that point now where it's like, okay, we need to open more classes, but there's not more of us.
There's not a lot of extra bandwidth left. Yeah. And also too, just being like, okay, it'd be nice to go away for a week, the two of us, and actually like not one of us have to stay and tend the shop, so.
Which has happened. Matthew's gone to visit family in Texas, taking the kids, and I stay here. It's like someday it'd be fun if we all could go together, but
yeah,
can't happen quite yet.
Getting closer, but
closer.
Well, we have our John and I's good friend Nick is kind of the same way. I remember when I had moved to Europe, he says, oh, I'd like to come out and see you. I'll have to come out and see you sometime. And it was like within a month, he had just bought his gym. So became a gym owner and had a baby. And I was like, dude, I'll see you in 5 years if you're lucky. What are you talking about here? Whatever time you have, there will not be money either. What are you doing? But it's funny how that works. And well, there's a thing John and I have talked about quite a bit too. And we do this a lot in our business. It's a long road with gyms because so much of the coaching philosophy and the presence, and especially in your guys' thing is based on you and your personality. Like it's going to take a long time for you to go, I'd let somebody else be the first person somebody talks to when they come into this gym. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a big step.
Yeah.
Kind of. People don't understand there's gyms out there with big, huge systems but they don't understand this process of bootstrapping from the bottom up, where that's a thing you got to eventually get over, or maybe not. But you have to start thinking in those terms. Like John and I, where we go through this stuff, it's like I do a thing and I recognize immediately the fault in me doing it, or at least that I realize we can't do this. I can't do this 10 times a week. So if this thing or whatever task it is 10x, we immediately have to start looking to outsource it because now I'm the bottleneck and I'm more valuable than that. And you guys start to see yourself in that same way as you go through. You're like, crap, I'm the only coaching that can be done is us. This is a problem now. We've reached a scale limit. We're stuck. Yep. And so it's like, well, now I need new coaching. I need to find a better way with my members, or my product offerings need to get shook up. It becomes a whole thing. But once you start looking like that and thinking like that, you're in the right place. And I always, John and I have friends that are like brand new gym owners, like just started. And we'll get into this probably before we go too. But is that they have to get to that point first, where like, I'd love to tell them like, jump to this, but like when money's tight and you're just doing the stuff, it's got to be you, and you really want to own the product that's going out on the floor. So you can't just give it to one of your clients right away. It just becomes, it's a point that it's a hill everybody has to climb up and get to the top of, and then decide where they want to go from there, and which pieces they need to keep them and which pieces they need to start offloading. But it sounds like you guys are right about at the right spot, which is good. It only took all of COVID and you're still here, and then you're still asking the right questions, which is good.
Yeah. I think even just trusting the people we have now with another coach, sometimes it's like, you want them, because those people, they've stayed faithful to us for a reason, and they believe in like what we're doing, but it's pretty much been the two of us. And like she said, one other coach part of the time. So we're kind of very careful and picky about that, which is, we want to make sure if we're entrusting our people in the hands of someone else that they're ready for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, John, do you want me to jump to the wrap-up questions? Do we have one more?
No, I have one more.
I
got one more. It would be, so there's been ample, I guarantee you, as we've all have experienced whenever we're starting something that's truly ours and we've gone all in. And I always feel like when you're this close to really doing something amazing, that's when adversity is going to become one of its greatest, right? Mm-hmm. And you've gotten there. And as you guys come up to every new chapter, I guarantee you there's going to be like these fingers that reach out and they come to get you and pull you back in. Like, man, it would be so much better if like somebody else paid me and I had a guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever. Like whatever that thing is that lurks, what keeps you from wanting to just keep grinding it out? Because you got like there's this hill that forever you're climbing, right? As a gym owner, because once you hit like, oh, we've made it, like this is the furthest we've gotten, we're ready to kind of turn the next chapter. That really is like just base camp.
Yeah,
And
you look
stop
out
for a
over
minute,
the horizon and you realize there's a lot more hills and they're all
like, oh, there's, we got, and what's crazy is it's like, it's by your own doing, your own choosing, you're doing this to yourself. You're like, I just love like self-inflicting this pain and wanting to do more. And as long as your foundation, like like you guys talk about, this constant reassessment and coming back to your core, coming back to who you are, as long as you've done that work ahead of time and you know who you are, as you start kind of making your way up the mountain, there could be lots of different ways of going about doing what you do, but you make sure, like, are we on the right mountain? Is this even the right direction that we're going? But once you get there and you kind of get to base camp, be like, awesome, like this is a new thing. You're like, all right, that one, I want to go to that one now. And then off you go. It'd be so much easier to just have somebody be like, I'll carry you. Like, we'll carry you over here. It's a different mountain that's over there. And it's completely unrelated to what you're doing now. But like, what keeps you from doing that? To just kind of stop the fight. Why do you keep doing what you're doing? And what keeps you from quitting, right? The gym owner life that you're in now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a couple of things. One is sometimes I want easier, but when I actually think about it, that ends up sounding really boring. Like, because then you don't ever get to really challenge yourself and see that next thing. You'll just, it doesn't sound that interesting to have something just given to you that you didn't have to kind of, battle for. But also, I mean, there are definitely times where I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, let's just go back to the 9 to 5. You go find the job. I'll just focus on school with the kids and taking them to all their stuff. And, but then, when someone comes up to you and they're crying and they say that you've completely changed their life and they're in a better place mentally and physically than they have ever been or been in a long time, that for me is like, oh, this is why we do it. This is amazing. Like, I'm not just going to die without ever having affected the world in some way, in some positive way. Yeah. And that is a really good feeling.
And I think having done both, I'm comfortable now being like, okay, I'm not an employee. Or I'm sorry, I'm not an employee. I'm like I'm going to have to do something entrepreneurial. That's just, I don't think I can go back to that. And doing what we're doing, like going in and like she said, seeing the impact you're having on people, that makes it to where I'm like, okay, I'm not just doing this to make money. I'm not just taking people's money, selling them a product. Like, I'm actually having an impact, and that makes it to where I want to go in every day and be like, yep, let's keep doing this, because I feel like, to me, at the end of the day, it's like the money is necessary. It's great. But the thing that actually makes me wake up in the morning and be like, let's go, let's do this, is having that impact on people's lives. So, yeah.
I feel you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that really mirrors a lot of what, for a lot of gym owners would probably say something very similar. For me, it was reflective of the transformation I kind of had in my life as I found fitness and moving and just in general. And I really appreciate it. It changed my whole trajectory on what I wanted to do and what I thought I wanted to do and what I was capable of. And that was the piece that I wanted to share. So I definitely feel you guys on that, because that's very, very similar to the reasons that I kind of opened my gym. That was kind of my why for starting and my why for trying to spread this stuff around as well. So, that's commendable. It's not because the money was stacking high.
There's a lot of other there's a lot of other probably easier ways, even entrepreneurially, to make some stacks of money faster. So
but maybe the rewards, the non-monetary rewards aren't as fulfilling, or they certainly wouldn't connect to you in that way. I know chefs and cooks that feel the same way in the way that, like Elspeth described, when people come in, is like, I just see somebody really enjoy my food, and I love cooking for people. I love the look in their face. Me, I couldn't care less about that at all. If I cooked food and people like it, it's like, cool. Like, I'd rather go away now. That's, for me, that doesn't register to me. On the fitness thing, it absolutely does. So I think you guys definitely found your thing. I have one question we want to send you guys off with, have you guys answer before we send people away. And this one is if you could give one piece of advice to someone who maybe wants to follow through your footsteps or wants to open a spot? Based on your experience right now up to this point, what's one piece of advice you'd like to give to somebody in the gym owner space?
So
Starting in it.
Someone that's starting up. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I would say spend less time stressing about getting your clients in and spending more time figuring out who you actually are as a coach. What are you good at? Kind of what makes you want to do this?
Mm-hmm. And I think to tie to that, I would say is you've got to start coaching. Like, don't just sit there studying, trying to figure things out, figure out your business plan. Can I make this work financially? Like, actually start coaching people. There's ways to do it with, minimal, money up front. So start doing that, and learn who you are as a coach, because that's going to be your product.
Yeah.
And, you have to know what it is and believe in it before anybody else will. So,
and make sure that you're actually training in that way too. That's been big for us, is the way we train people is the way we train ourselves as well.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, it's been awesome having you guys on.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
If folks want to be able to follow you, they want to follow, whether you want them following you personally, following the gym, kind of following your journey, keeping up with you all and everything that you're doing. It sounds like you're doing all the right things. You've done it all the right way, your way first. Makes you very interesting to see what happens next. How can they follow you best?
The best one's probably going to be on Instagram. It's all just one word, Stout-Heart Fitness. They can follow. We're on Facebook too. We've got a page on there that doesn't actually update as much. And then they can also visit our website. It's stoutheartfitness.com. And then the Instagram is where we'll typically put up, we'll have more updates on stuff we're doing. And we'll try to put up several times a week stories of just showing our classes and what we do. And we'll have hopefully some new content here soon too. We're working with someone on to be able to put up on some of those platforms too. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks a bunch, guys. I really, really appreciate it. These are our first interviews, John? This is our first interview.
You guys are officially our first interview.
Yeah.
Number one.
Way to go.
Cool.
So the congratulations is in order, I suppose, to us. Thanks a lot for
having us. Congratulations,
guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, John.